الحمد لله الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض ولم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك وخلق كل شيء فقدره تقديرا. يا أيها النبي إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا وبشر المؤمنين بأن لهم من الله فضلا كبيرا ولا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين ودع أذاهم وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت وتوكل على العزيز الرحيم الذي يراك حين تقوم وتقلبك في الساجدين إنه هو السميع العليم. صلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء إمام المرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. بسم الله الرحمن أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبارك الذي نزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد. Assalamu alaikum and Jummah Mubarak. I thought today maybe we can keep it a bit more interactive. The topic that I have to discuss today, if you guys are feeling that you're losing me or that I'm losing you, just jump in, so ask some questions. I know it's unorthodox, but I think that's the best way to keep everyone involved, and we'll try to make it short and sweet, and so we can get back to our work. Today I would like to speak about Furqaan. Okay, the Quran itself, another word for it is Al-Furqaan. So does anybody know what Furqaan is? And then we'll look at the three-word verb that is the root of the word Furqaan, and then that'll give it more meaning for us, inshallah. Furqaan, anybody know? So Furqaan comes from the three-word root, which is faraq. Fa, ra, and qaf. And so faraq in Urdu, difference, right? So Furqaan is basically, so the ayah that I just read is from Surah Al-Furqaan. It's the first verse of Surah Al-Furqaan. It says, تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي نَزَّلَ الْفُرْقَانَ عَلَىٰ عَبْدِهِ لِيَكُونَ لِلْعَالَمِينَ نَذِيرًا. Blessed is he, Allah, who has sent down upon his servant the Furqaan, so that he can become to the worlds a warner. So the Furqaan, if you reduce it to its three-letter verb, it's faraq. And faraq means to, just one second, I have it right here. It has many meanings. It means to discriminate, to separate, to distinguish, to discern, to set apart. Many times in the Quran, فَرِيقُمْ أَصْحَابُ الْجَنَّةِ وَفَرِيقُمْ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ. There's a party, a part of them, a group of them that are going to be in the Jannah, a group of them that are going to be in the Nar, the fire. So it means to set apart, to discern, to ascertain truth from falsehood. Very important. To ascertain real from illusion. To determine authentic versus inauthentic. So the Furqaan, the Quran, is another word for the Quran is Furqaan. And Furqaan, when we practice in the recitation of Quran, that is one of the gifts that is presented to us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He gives us the ability to discern. And discernment is a very important concept in the Quran and in our deen as well, because there is a lot of deception, there's a lot of illusion, and to discern between those two things, it becomes harder and harder as the days are going by, because we're fed with so much information that we don't know what is true, what is false. So the wisdom of the Quran and all the other books of Allah that He has revealed upon His messengers is that they give us knowledge of the unseen, and they give us an ability to discern and to ascertain truth from falsehood. So why is the Quran called Al-Furqaan? Because number one, it separates halal from haram. So we have the hudud Allah that we discussed, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, the boundaries of Allah in the forgiveness sermon that we had. It gives us the ability to separate halal from haram. So there's these boundaries of Allah that are explained primarily in the Quran, and it seeks to have a faraq, a difference between those two things. So we can go on the Sirat al-Mustaqim, which is the straight path. Then the second aspect of why the Quran is called the Furqaan is because it clarifies our internal vision. It gives us a mercy from Allah, and what shaitan's goal is to make us stumble. to make that vision foggy for us. But Allah's goal is to clarify that internal vision for us. So let's go to a part in the Quran, Surah Anfal, where Furqaan is actually mentioned as a gift that comes from Allah. It says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, and this is verse 29 of Surah Al-Anfal. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن تتقوا الله يجعل لكم فرقانا ويكفر عليكم ويكفر عنكم سيئاتكم ويغفر لكم والله ذو الفضل العظيم. It says, O you who believe, O you who have faith, if you are mindful of Allah, if you practice taqwa, He shall appoint for you a criterion, a furqan, a discernment, and absolve you of your misdeeds and forgive you, for Allah is a dispenser of a great grace. Okay, so we can see from this ayah that the furqan, just like forgiveness and taking away your misdeeds, is a gift from Allah, and it can only come from Allah. So no one else can provide you with that internal vision. All we get is information, and for us to decipher what is real and what is false, and what is Sirat al-Mustaqim and what is the path to Jahannam, is the Furqan. And Allah is the one who gives that gift, because it said وَنَزَّلَ الْفُرْقَانِ, you know, وَجَعَلْكُمْ فُرْقَانِ, He will give it to you. So it's coming from the heavens and it's coming to us, just like last week when we talked about the concept of sakina in our last khutbah. هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. So He's the one who sends down sakina to your hearts, of only the mu'mineen. So again, we see that connection between ones who have faith, ones who have professed their faith, and the gifts that Allah gives them because they keep on remembering Him. So that is from Surah Al-Anfal. And so I just want to give an example to you guys to further hone in on the meaning of Furqan, what it really is. So for example, Shane, you have glasses, right? What's your prescription, if you don't mind me asking?
1.25 and 1.5.
It's not that bad.
No.
But if I took away your glasses, you'd feel a little uncomfortable. It'd be a little blurry for you, right?
Absolutely.
So exactly. So think of Furqan as glasses for you that you can just see so much more clearly, right? So I got corrective laser eye surgery, so I don't need them anymore, so I'm seeing 20/20 right now. But metaphorically, the vision that I'm speaking of is actually the vision of the hearts, right? So the best optometrist or ophthalmologist of the internal vision is who? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So how we can get our prescription for our internal vision is participating in the dhikr of Allah. So means by which we can attain this Furqan is being, okay, so when we do a dhikr of Allah, a presence of mind is very important. Okay, so when you do any devotional practices, devotion means what? Like when you're devoted to something, you're giving it your...
Submissive.
Yeah, and you're giving it your 100%, right? So I find that the world that we're living in right now, it's very hard to practice a devotional practice, right? Would you agree, Natasha? Like we were just speaking about this, like there's so much distraction. When I was in Toronto, I couldn't even remember to drink water. Like that, you know, I used to... Sometimes you don't remember, yeah, because it goes, and when you pray, like what type of prayer really is it, right? Yeah, exactly. So we're depriving ourselves of these great gifts of Allah. You know, the sakina of Allah, the furqan of Allah, forgiveness of Allah. You know, when we ask for forgiveness, how sincere do we have to be? Do we have time to be that sincere? You know, I didn't even have time to be that sincere or that quality time with my own family when I was in Toronto, because everyone was just so preoccupied. And with all the information that we're fed and the desperate situation that the world finds itself in with the economic situation, we find that it's very hard to be sincere even in our repentance, sincere in our remembrance of Allah, sincere devotional acts which are devoted to Allah. We're not able to do it. So the Quranic recitation itself, right? The Quranic recitation itself, the Quran is filled with telling us, أَفَلَا يَتَفَكَّرُونَ أَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Almost every verse ends with these type of what I like to call connective statements at the end of passages, where don't you reflect? You know, don't you use your reason? Don't you remember? So how can we practice these pillars of the Quran when we're not in the presence of mind? So there is a two-way relation between us and Allah. So if we look at the surah of Fath, when we just talked about هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So mu'minina is who? One who is in sincere faith and remembrance of Allah, right? And we have to be able to go back, revert to that and practice these things. And then in Surah Ahzab, it says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ ذِكْرًا كَثِيرًا. O you who have believed, remember Allah with a frequent remembrance. هُوَ الَّذِي يُصَلِّي عَلَيْكُمْ وَمَلَائِكَتُهُ يُخْرِجُكُمْ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. That's what we talked about 2 weeks ago, where He pulls you out of it. وَكَانَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَحِيمًا. Again, that connection, that condition of mu'minina rahima. So if we want the mercy of Allah, these great gifts that He has promised us, we have to be able to turn in a way where we're not distracted, where our hearts aren't distracted. So Furqaan is very important, like we talked about. It's the vision of the heart, the internal vision. So in Surah Al-Hajj, verse 46, it says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Have they not traveled through the land so that they may have hearts by which they may exercise their reason? Just look at the words, okay? This is exactly what we're talking about. Have they not traveled through the land so that they may have hearts, the internal vision, by which they may exercise their reason? So you can't exercise your reason with your physical vision. It's something else that's inside of you that gives you that ability to resonate, to reason, to use logic. Or ears by which they may hear. Indeed, it is not the eyes that turn blind, but it is the hearts in the breasts that turn blind. Okay, so there's a huge comparison here between physical vision and internal vision. And Furqaan is that internal discernment, the ability to distinguish evil from good, light from darkness. And sometimes the vision becomes blurry. So I remember when I was a kid and I was walking with my father, there used to be potholes on the road, and he used to be just taking me, away so I don't fall in those potholes. And so he was like a guide to me, for example. And we have guides, right? We have imams and our prophets as our guides. And they always want to keep us away from stumbling, their example. And we have the Quran, which is this is basically a dhikr of Rasulullah with us right now. I mean, it came from his mouth and it's preserved in its original nature. So this is our guide to avoid those potholes. And so imagine if we keep falling into potholes. Number one, we can get discouraged, right? We can get injured, we can get hurt, we can get spiritually hurt. Our nafs can get tarnished. And so Allah promises us that, when we do fall and we're sincere that we want to, recuperate our nafs, He can pick us up, and He will take that dust off the shoulder, a Hove reference right here. He'll clean you up, He'll make you new so you can go again. But He doesn't want you to keep on falling in the same pothole over and over again, We have to learn from our mistakes. And so imagine now if you had this vision where you're walking in the nighttime and there's potholes everywhere and someone just turns on the light for you. Now you can dodge those potholes, you can avoid it. That's what Furqaan is. It's from Allah, a light inside of you. And obviously this is in a metaphorical sense, not in a physical sense, but those spiritual potholes that tend to creep up on us. There's a light that Allah gives us that's beyond our five senses, in which we can see these potholes and we can navigate through them. And so we can get through this life without having to fall into those potholes, And sometimes when we fall in, we don't even know that we're in the pothole sometimes, and we just, we're stationary. Like it says in Surah Yasin, we can just take their eyes out, and it's spiritual. It says we can blow out their spiritual insight so that they can't move forward, go back, and they're stuck. They're stuck. So sometimes we get stuck spiritually inside that pothole. We don't ask for forgiveness. And so Allah can't even pull us out, nor can we pull ourselves out. And so there's a spiritual sort of paralysis that goes on. And in the world that we're living in right now, we're experiencing an intellectual paralysis where we're not able to think for ourselves. We're kind of like giving that authority over to other people. Like, I'm so busy, I don't even want to think. You just do the thinking for me and I'll just follow. So how can we ever ascertain these spiritual potholes if we're not even able to resonate or reason within ourselves, right? So this is Furqaan. And so what I wanted to do today is just go over this great gift, spiritual gift, that we can benefit from, that Allah has promised us that He'll give it to us if we're in presence of mind through devotional practices, if we do the dhikr of Allah, and you know, we call upon Allah as a witness today, that we're participating in this, and that He witnesses, He's the best of witnesses, and that through this witness of His eyesight, that He can bless us, you know, and that He can forgive us, and He can give us these blessings that we desperately need, you know. And to think that we are needless is a sense of arrogance. You know, we have to really humble ourselves to be able to realize that we're always in need of Allah, you know. It's said to Rasulullah in Surah Al-Duha, وَوَجَدَهُمْ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. We found you in great need and we gave you self-sustenance, you know. And some people view that in the material sense, that yeah, okay, you were poor and we made you self-sufficient. But there's a spiritual aspect to that too. When we're always in need of something but we can't channel it towards Allah, we grasp things which are toxic for us. You know, there's a need inside of us to fill that. And so when he's telling Rasulullah that وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى, I made you self-sufficient through my gifts. You know, so we're in need of Allah. And we have to realize that. We have to reach out to Him in sincerity. The world is going very fast, I realize that, but we need to slowly just get the presence of mind, especially during Quranic recitation and prayer. Because salah is, remember, it's a connection. You can't have a connection if we're not in it. And Natasha, honestly, I felt it too, man, in Toronto. And I feel it sometimes, and I'm like, why can't I connect the way that, you know, I did yesterday or the way I did a month ago? And we go through these cycles. Like the Prophet said, the heart, qalb, actually comes from always turning, like it's always fluctuating. The heart is always turning. So we pray that, you know, that heart can always turn towards Allah. That's the qibla. So the meaning of qibla is a cynosure. Like everyone has that center point in their life that they turn to. Whether it be money, your kids, your family. We want to make our center point Allah. We want to turn our hearts, which are always fluctuating, towards the focus into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I just wanted to give a brief contrast, because I know we talked about Furqaan, but I think it really sticks out when you contrast it to something else, right? And so I wanted to contrast it to shaitan, because shaitan seeks to he wants to rip those glasses off your eyes right now. So he wants to come and be like, I want to keep Shane in a confused state, where he's kind of just like, he doesn't know whether to go forward or back, and he enjoys that because he likes to see us confused. Because when we're confused, we give in to his temptation. Whenever we cannot think for ourselves, we let go of that authority to somebody else, right? So if you look at Surah Fatir and Surah Luqman, in Surah Fatir verse 5 and Surah Luqman 33, it refers to shaitan as a deceiver. Okay, in the beginning of Surah Fatir and at the end of Surah Luqman, it says, do not get deceived by the deceiver. You know, and I want to just pull up that ayah very quickly so I can have the exact translation for it. I know I want to make this short, but there's very important points, so please just stick with me, okay? O mankind, Allah's promise is indeed true, that you will be resurrected, that the world is going to come to an end, that this dunya is fleeting, okay? So do not let the life of the world deceive you, nor let the deceiver, shaitan, deceive you concerning Allah. Okay? So spiritual sight, shaitan wants to make it blurry, cloudy, foggy, so that we sometimes, you know, we even question, is there really a God, you know? I mean, let's be honest here, you know, and that's in the Quran too. Look at everything around you. Look at the heavens and the earth. Everything that we have created, the sun, the moon, and how it's going in its accordance, you know, swimming in its orbit, like it says in Surah Yasin. In that are signs for a people who reflect. Again, the concept of reflection. How can we ever look up at the skies, Natasha? When you're in Toronto, the life that, you know, the people are living, do you think they even have, I don't have time to drink water. How can I look up at the sky and the stars and just contemplate and reflect? People will think I'm crazy, right? Bro, what are you doing? You're in Toronto, man. This is not the way we live. What are you, you know, what are you, a hippie or whatever, you know? But the Quran tells you, reflect, you know? And Surah Luqman, again, O mankind, be wary of your Lord and fear the day when a father will not atone for his child, nor the child will atone for its father in any way. Indeed, Allah's promise is true. So do not let the life of the world deceive you, nor let the deceiver deceive you concerning Allah. Subhanallah. You know, it's so beautiful. And so lastly, just to kind of bring in that comparison, Allah wants to give you self-assurance. He wants to give you confidence. He wants to give you that sense of direction. Shaitan wants to give you confusion. Again, this is the contrast. Allah wants to make you seeing internally and externally, but shaitan wants to make you blind. And Allah, like it says in Surah Mulk, I know we recite Surah Mulk a lot, there's that comparison. Are these two things the same? The person who's walking upright and has a purpose in life, and the one who's always stumbling and his face is always hitting the ground, right? That's in Surah Luqman. So Allah wants you to be upright. He wants you to have a purpose, and He wants you to go towards the ultimate truth. Whereas shaitan wants you to stumble. He wants you to go into those potholes. So there's that comparison. And then lastly, and I won't take much more of your time, I'm so sorry, but this is such an important part. Dajjal, okay? I want to talk about Dajjal right now, just to give it that comparison. Now, anyone know what the word Dajjal actually means to its three-letter root verb? Three-letter root verb is Dajjal. Dal, Jeen, and Lam, okay? Dajjal. Dajjal, in contemporary Arabic, it sets deceiver, a swindler, cheat. But if you go in its original Arabic form, the verb actually means a gilder or a silverer. Do you know what that is, a gilder or a silverer? Taking something that's very ordinary, or maybe something even that's very toxic and bad, and coating it with gold. And coating it with silver. So that's the root word of a Dajjal. He makes something that is actually bad appear like it's very fruitful, like it pulls you, but through the worldly aspect. So it's like, it's very interesting. Like they took a horse, and when it was black, they paint it with gold, and all of a sudden it becomes so much more appealing to the people, when in fact it's just a black horse, right? So this is a gilder or a silverer. Like it takes stuff that is ordinary, sometimes even bad, and coats it in ornaments, especially gold, so that people can go towards it. So we can make the connection right now, right? Like there are things which are toxic, and what shaitan, and Dajjal is the army of shaitan. He's the head officer that's going to come, that's of shaitan. And he will paint things, he will decorate things. And that says in the Quran, we made their deeds seem decorous to them. You know, so he'll decorate things in a way which is so appealing to us that we don't even know that we're going into spiritual defilement. So there's, so this is a false messiah is another one, Antichrist. So one sec, I had a point about Dajjal which I'm forgetting right now, but it was so important. If you look at Surah An-Nas, at the ending of it, وَمِن شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ. So shaitan can whisper to us, decorate things good from both the spiritual world, which is jinn, which we can't see, and he can take form of the nas. The mankind will pull you into stuff that's very deceiving, okay? And so there's two things, yes.
Because we're talking about the metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Just because you mentioned it. A few years back, someone had told me something that the job is actually a metaphor. It's not even a real being.
Oh yeah.
And something that he mentioned was that our phones, you're saying they take something to make it look good to you, but it actually takes you away from your spirituality.
100%.
Our phones are the first, especially in today's day and age, it's like the phones are what, everything is here.
Everything.
It looks nice, everyone has one, right? They make it look appealing, and what is it doing at the end of the day?
It's distracting us from the goal.
Distracting you from not only from spirituality, but
Exactly.
from your family, your friends,
Exactly.
from anything else. It's the main distraction, and that was like something that someone had mentioned to me, like the job might not even be an actual being,
Exactly.
but it could be right here in our hands right now.
Yeah.
And this is what's taking us away
Yeah.
from everything at the end of the day.
And another point I want to add to that is that children are the closest thing to Allah that we have in this world. That's why they're so cherished by so many communities, different cultures throughout history. That children were something that you. So I'm sure when you look at Rida and Reza and you put them in front of a screen, because I know when I put Noura and Yasser in front of a screen, you see them before and after it. Do you see a difference or no? So that's a sign to us. This is doing something.
Them in front of the screen, it's the parents in front of the screen when
Yeah.
the children are there, because if your children are
Then you're distracted from your children.
distracted from them, they're
Exactly.
distracted from
Yeah.
you. So at the end of the day,
Yeah.
what, you know what I mean? Like that could be the Dajjal, and it's already
Yeah.
here,
Exactly.
right?
It's 100%. It's already. So there's a hadith, a very important hadith from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. That says Dajjal will come into this world, and when you know that he's there with you in the world that you're living in, he'll come with two things. One is a river, and one is fire. He will place the river to the path that leads to destruction, to hell. And the fire will be placed on the path that will lead to heaven. So he will completely delude the world, make it so appealing through that gilder, like he'll decorate it through gold, which is the river, right? That's the analogy that's being made here. And he'll make the path to hell seem beautiful. Rainbows, butterflies, but in fact, it's the path leading to your destruction, to hell. And the path that is more difficult, the one that has thorns and fire, that'll be the path to Allah. So many times in the Quran is وَصَدُّوا عَن سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, the one who plants himself and blocks the way to Allah. It's mentioned almost in so many times in the Quran when I've recited it. صَدُّوا عَن سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. So what Dajjal seeks to do is block the path to Allah. And he'll do it in a way which he'll make the path to Allah seem very distasteful, and he'll make the path to shaitan seem very fruitful. So we can relate that, like the phone thing that you mentioned, it's so like appealing, and it's like gold for me. Like I want to go back, and I want, even though I have nothing to check, just I want to go back on it because it's a sense of comfort to me. So this is the way that he can absolutely mislead us. So that's the contrast that I wanted to make between Furqaan, which is the clarity of internal vision that Allah grants us, but through devotional practice we have to be in that transaction, And there is a transaction that's mentioned in the Quran too. Shall I inform you of a transaction that'll never fail? It says in Surah As-Saf. And so there is you have to devote yourself to Allah, and He will give you what you need. And it's not because He needs our risk. It's because He wants to know who it is that's coming back to Him to remember Him, and then He will give you that risk that's needed. So we're living in a time of intellectual paralysis. I've seen, Natasha, in the last 2-3 years, the world has changed drastically. And when I went back to Toronto, I witnessed it with my eyes. Even I witnessed it here in Costa Rica. And this is nothing compared to what is going to come. Okay? There's going to be an absolute intellectual paralysis. And the ones who are going to be successful are the ones who are going to turn back to Allah. And I know it sounds rhetorical, but now I hope, inshallah, that we have a greater meaning of what it means to turn back to Allah and what that can offer us. Because this is all, it seems like a design of this being, Dajjal, is to distract our minds and to confuse us, so that even when we turn back to Allah, we get no benefit because we're not 100% turned. And then what happens when you don't get benefit is you slowly start leaving that practice. You're like, it doesn't benefit me anymore. Let me just go to my phone, But if we sincerely practice these great rituals that are given to us from Prophet Muhammad, we can get that. We can get that discernment, and that discernment is priceless. These are gifts that are priceless. Faith, sakina, discernment, hidayah, the guidance. These are so important. So that was my compare and contrast of Furqaan versus Furqaan versus deception. Clarity versus deception. Discernment versus deception. That's basically it right there. Discernment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, deception from shaitan and Dajjal. And so how can we decipher through these things? And it's not an easy task, because what we're presented with, and inshallah may Allah make it easy for us. So I want to make a prayer for all of us right now, that inshallah through this gathering, and through the prayers that we do, and the little time that we take out, come on, half an hour in a whole day when we really concentrate and give reflection, it's not that much. God doesn't ask for that much, but it hopefully, inshallah, clarifies a lot to us, so that when we now go back, we can be in a sincere remembrance of Allah. So I pray that through this gathering that we had today, through the dhikr of Allah, that we can be reformed, and we can be refined, and we can be spiritually sound, and that Allah can give us Furqaan, so that we can navigate the potholes, the spiritual potholes of this life, and we can make it through the storm of this life, hopefully as unscathed as possible. We will never be completely unscathed, but that's where Allah's mercy comes in. It is only through the grace of Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, only through the grace of Allah that we can enter paradise. Because He is the one who will give us the final purification of our nafs, and then we can enter into paradise. But we have to try our best to remain as unscathed as possible. Physical injuries of the potholes give us cuts. Spiritual injuries of these spiritual potholes give us darknesses in our nafs. So we want the light to take over. And inshallah, may God bless us all. May God bless our families, our children, our progeny to come. And may God make these gatherings possible. Because honestly, it's worth it. And it should be a priority in our lives. And so with that, I just want to end, and inshallah we'll meet again next week. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. 3 loud salawats, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala ya Ahmad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. For the second portion, I'm sorry, I was actually on my flight last night. I was preparing what I wanted to say today. So Amin was with me on the flight last night, yeah. And we were actually talking about the Matrix. So that's why I brought it up with you too. And so a lot of people share that sentiment. It's just sometimes, right now we're at a point where we're kind of self-censoring ourselves, There's that thing, maybe it's not right for me to speak about this. Maybe it won't be accepted by me. How will they feel if I speak about this? But as long as we stay true to Allah, we can speak the haqq, we can speak the truth. And so for the second portion, I just want to do a simple translation of a passage of the Quran that's in Surah Al-Jathiyah. I don't know the number of the surah, but the verse is from 18 to verse 20. And before this verse, it talks about the Bani Israel and how God gave them fadl. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ حُكْمًا وَكِتَابًا وَنُبُوَّةً. We gave them, prophethood and the kitab and the wisdom. But they deviated, they split themselves up. فَمَا اخْتَلِفُوا إِلَّا مِن بَعْدَ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْعِلْمُ. They split themselves up only after the knowledge had come to them. Very, very interesting. And we will discern between them on the day of judgment, Allah says. And then the important part right now, it says to Prophet Muhammad, it says, ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَى شَرِيعَةٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْرِ فَاتَّبِعْهَا وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Then after that, surely we gave you the Sharia. And the Sharia it actually means the path to water. It's very interesting. In the desert, Arabic language is so rich that if you look at the roots of it, it came down in the desert, the nomads, right? And so a path to water is something that's so sought after because you're in a drought, right? So Sharia means we have given you that path to water, now come. And it's such a beautiful metaphor that physically, yes, it makes sense too, but if you look at it in a deeper sense, the path to life, the path to water, the path to the true life that's going to come. ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَى شَرِيعَةٍ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ. From our command, we gave it to you from the heavens. فَاتَّبِعْهَا. So follow it. Follow it. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And do not follow the desires of the people who do not know this path. Very important, right, Natasha? There's the path of Allah that He's telling you to follow, the Sharia, and then there's stuff that other people want you to follow that are from their own desires. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ إِنَّهُمْ لَن يُغْنُوا عَنْكَ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا. They will not benefit you or appease you in any way against Allah on the Day of Judgment. These people who are telling you to follow something that's opposite of the Sharia. إِنَّهُمْ لَن يُغْنُوا عَنْكَ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا وَإِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. And surely the oppressors are friends of each other. وَاللَّهُ وَلِيُّ الْمُتَّقِينَ. But Allah is the one who is the friend, the master of the muttaqeen, of the ones who have a presence of mind, mindfulness, right? God consciousness. That requires time, it requires devotional practices. So when we give that, Wallahu waliyul muttaqeen. So it's a beautiful kind of thing that leads us back to the concept of Furqaan, that God has offered us from His amr, from His command, a sharia. He's told us to follow it. And He's told the Prophet, we have given it to you, follow it. Do not follow the desires of the ones who do not know this. They do not know it, This is a great gift from Allah. It's a secret code in Sharia. It's the code, Sharia is also the code. It has a great secrets of wisdom inside the Quran. This is honestly such a blessed book. If we just turn to it in sincerity, it has knowledges and it has a divine wisdom that nothing in the world can offer you. And through this, it's a descending knowledge. Through this, mankind has been able to build ascending knowledges. Like the construction of great monuments and the sciences and the arts. This is the base of it, As soon as when the Islamic Empire expanded, it's because they were attached to the Quran. They had the ascending knowledge to give fruit to the. They had the descending knowledge to give fruit to the ascending knowledge. So, وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ إِنَّهُمْ لَنْ يُغْنُوا عَنْكَ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا وَإِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ وَاللَّهُ وَلِيُّ الْمُتَّقِينَ هَذَا بَصَائِرُ لِلنَّاسِ وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةٌ لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. These are the signs, the verses of Quran. بَصَائِرُ لِلنَّاسِ. Basa, the insight. This is what we're talking about. Lights and insight. بَصَائِرُ لِلنَّاسِ وَهُدًى, and a guidance. وَرَحْمَةٌ, a mercy. لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ, for a people who have certainty. You know, certainty, yaqeen is so important. And when you have yaqeen, you're like, I believe that this is from Allah. I truly believe this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have yaqeen. So I'm going to turn to it. When I have yaqeen, I will give it the respect that it deserves. I'm going to clear my mind. I don't care what's happening in the Matrix in Toronto, you know. I don't care who's wedding or play or what's happening. I'm going to give this the priority that it deserves. And then we will see the ways that Allah will reform us. The proof will be there. And that proof, again, وَلِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ, and He increases them faith on top of faith. When you have faith, you turn to this, you see the signs, you see the proof of it. What are you going to do next time? You'll turn to it even in more sincerity because you have seen it, you have experienced it. You're going to turn back to it with more sincerity. لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ. So, inshallah, you know, we can follow the Sharia of Allah. The only way we can know the Sharia is if we read the book. And when we read the book, we realize things that have been taught to us that are not true. You know, we realize there's a contradiction happening sometimes. What, are we reading the same book? What is happening? Do people even read this book? Am I reading it wrong? It doesn't seem like it is clear. It's clear as day. You know, I'm not trying to get metaphorical. Nothing. It's clear as day. And so it connects the other religions together. You know, it doesn't discriminate. It just talks about mukhlisin. Just be pure in your deen to Allah. Mukhlisin lahuddin. Surah Ikhlas is the purity. One God, you know, Tawheed, one nation, one community under one God. That's how we battle shaitan. That's how we battle Dajjal. So inshallah, God can give us the Furqaan to battle that deception, the clarity of internal vision, to battle that cloudiness and to just, you know, take it over. And then we can live in light, and that'll decrease the chances of shaitan trying to tempt us, manipulate us, make things seem decorative to pull us into the traps, and we don't want to go into the traps. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wassalamu ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.